Hi, everyone. My name is Jonah Chang, and apologies to my Genogram. It was only able to do a screenshot of it of from my Geno Pro document. But nevertheless, I'm going to start um, with myself. I was born in 1998, and as I share that, I'm going to share. Here we go. So yeah, for myself, I was born in 1998 in California, in Southern California. And 4 years later, my little sister Sarah, so born in the same city of Whittier, and we have grown up in Southern California all our lives. Um, Both of our parents, we do have a so-so relationship, I would say, for myself with my father. As you could see, the triple red lines indicate a fused type of relationship. And so that was kind of indicative. And as I explore and share with you all more about that and how our relationship came to be and how it was impacted by his relationship with his father. But before we get into that, overall, the bonds between us as a family have matured definitely. And throughout the years, it has been a rough, really, really rough past 8 years, I would say. But overcoming all that um, definitely helped our family in that sense. For my relationship with between my for the relationship between my parents, they kind of had a very rough, violent relationship. But like I said, over the years, they were able to kind of reconcile, especially for my mom, and they were able to kind of have a cut off, repaired relationship, as I indicate with these arrows right here. So next, I'm going to dive into my father's side. For my father, he had a very different uh, childhood, I would say, and it was the one that impacted our family the most, I would say. Um, my dad grew up in a very addictive household. Um, from his brother and his father. Um, my uncle, Charles, right here, he had a nicotine smoking addiction for at least 20 to 30 years. But after he went to jail for arson, for committing arson, he was able to put the nicotine addiction down. And that was a really huge momentum shift and basically a huge shocking moment for me. I would classify my relationship, my uncle, as very tight. I'm very compassionate and considerate for him because of his really traumatic and shocking childhood that led to his development. And I want to go back and talk about his uh, his his reasoning for arson. Really, it was, of course, not a good idea, but because of his issues with mental health, he currently goes through schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So I would say those really played a factor in his reason for committing arson. He was locked up for about a year until my grandfather was able to get a bail for him. But that was about approximately 5 years ago when that incident occurred. And I was still in high school at the time. And so my family didn't really share the news for that as much until my uncle came out of jail. But for his background, he had a very full life at school. He was constantly being bullied by his teachers and by his classmates. And according to my uncle, they constantly beat him, his teachers, especially from Taiwan. and it even led to a lot of bullying and when he moved to the States. And so I want to talk about the transitioning for my father and his family from transitioning from Taiwan and making the move here as legal immigrants to America. And so the reasoning for their move was actually due to my grandpa, Johnson, right here. He had a very troubling addiction with alcohol, and he would get into a lot of car crashes, a lot of DUIs in Taiwan, and it was it was very stressful for my father's family, to say the least. Um, my grandma Victoria was heavily affected by it, um, and she just couldn't take it any longer, and they made the move to California, which they stayed with my grandpa's brother at the time. But their relationship is not the best from what I know. But really, I really only know my grandparents and their immediate family. And so when they moved to America in the 80s, my father and his younger brother went to school and had the American education. And that was a huge switch for my father's identity because um, now if you were to ask him what culture he really resides with or even identifies with, he would definitely say he is um, Asian American, of course, but he feels more tied to the American culture and the American people and the nationalism that we have here compared to his background in Taiwan. I would say he does not have a really close knit culture and his background to Taiwan, really, due to his move to America when he was around 13 years old. And basically, my dad had the most stressful life, I would say, from shifting to America and having to also translate for his parents as well. Um, there were many different incidents of legal issues that were brought up. For example, my grandpa, once again, could not handle his alcoholic addiction. Even when he came to the States, there was one incident where he was drunk driving, and one night a police officer had to come to their door, knock, and ask if the drunk driver lived in the house. And of course, my father had to answer because he was the only one that could really speak English well, and he eventually stepped up as the man of the house. And that also really led to his development in our family. He really takes the lead and the role of being the man in the house, being this provider financially, and her mother is the was the stay-at-home mom for basically my whole adolescence and even going through my adult life as well. So definitely, my father bared all the burdens as well, and so that led to a lot of violent behavior, a lot of shocking incidents for our family. And lastly, I just want to go back to my uncle again because of his profound impact on me. Like I said, he did battle with a lot of mental abuse, which led him to experiencing schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And I would see that growing up, and I would see that my uncle Charles was never fully there mentally. He would say a lot of shocking things, and he would also show delusions of saying that the radio was always talking about him. And I really noticed this, and I started to connect it to all my education and what led me to dive deeper and go into the psychology for my undergrad and eventually lead me to where I am now as an aspiring marriage and family therapist, of course. So he was the one that really propelled me into this profession and the compassion and all the passion for therapy, and just seeing the effects of difficult how difficult living and functioning with mental health can be. And so he was always was one of the most impactful members of the family, definitely for me. Next, I want to talk about my grandma from my father's side. She was the breadwinner, surprisingly. I know it's very, very cool of her, and I always admired her for that. She ran her own business, and eventually, my grandpa, with his drinking behavior and addictions, he um, was raised as the oldest son in his family, and he never really took any responsibilities because my grandpa's father, my great grandfather, was very wealthy in Taiwan at the time. So my grandpa never really had any much responsibilities or um, um, basically leadership that he had to take. So my grandmother is a very, very strong woman, very strong. Um, and it was unfortunate because as I labeled my grandpa's emotional relation to my grandmother, it was very manipulative at times, very manipulative. And it was shown, and unfortunately, the cycle also showed with my dad's relationship with my mother. And so she runs her own business, and she was the main breadwinner. And she has her own store, which they were able to survive on. And eventually, in the 90s, my father shared with me one of their uh, legal issues. It seems like a recurring theme where my father's side of the family had many legal issues. Um, and this one was regarding for her business, and that there was a chance that she was selling counterfeit items. So they had to go to court, and it was a very long process with trying to find multiple lawyers. And my dad would tell me that it was an insanely shocking experience for him because he had to be the main figure to speak at these trials, and he basically had that role. Just um, he was the only one that could really handle the role and given at the time. And lastly, for legal issues, my dad would always get into trouble with the law. During his teen years and his young adult age, he would always get into a lot of defiant acts, such as driving recklessly, and he would get a lot of tickets on the road. Um, and that is about it for my paternal side. And now, as I move on to my maternal side, my relatives all currently live in Japan, and so my connection to them is not as strong as I would like it to be, but um, I still have some phone calls, and I visit them time to time in Japan. And overall, it's a great emotional connection, even though it's not as close as I would like it to be. And so, my mother's side, she has a very close relationship with her father. Um, it was kind of the thing in Japan where the men don't really show emotion, right? Just as any other societal standards and norms, due to showing masculinity, um, and not wanting to show that fear of showing emotion that might lead others to think of them as weak. And so my mother's father only connected to my mom, and to her brother, it was strictly business. It was very very just straightforward, not much joking, not much emotions really, when I would see them communicate. Um, but on the other hand, for my grandmother, she was very affectionate, of course, and she was also a stay-at-home mom, just like my mother as well. Regarding my cousins, my four cousins, um, they are um, all athletes, but the youngest one, Hannah, she's the youngest cousin, and she has, as I have shown right here, a fused relationship with her mom. And I did this based off my recent observations that, and of course, from what my cousin tells me as well, that they don't have a really strong relationship and they argue all the time. And mostly it's due to just living at home. And so currently, my youngest cousin is in England for her study abroad program. And I hope she's doing great right now. My second cousin, Aishin, he is currently he is currently working as a salary man in Japan, and along with his two older brothers. And so when I would visit my relatives in Japan, was always culturally shocked with familial aspects and such as such as showing emotion. There was a story where I was helping my little cousin Ishin with his English homework, and I was on the phone with him, and I would always praise him for doing well and responding. And then he was just very shocked. He didn't know how to respond to my praises, and that's due to the societal standards and cultures in Japan, where praising is not much of a thing. It's usually mostly critiques instead of praises. And so that is for my maternal side. Overall, a lot of development coming from my parents. Definitely living as a Christian household definitely played a big part when I was once conservative, um, and but now after going through education and of course going through my undergraduate at UCR and learning about the LGBT community, which was very eye-opening. That was honestly one of my favorite aspects and my favorite takeaways from my undergrad. Just experiencing and communicating with the transgender community at UCR was very eye-opening for me, and I was able to gain a further sense of respect and inspiration and for their life backgrounds from their traumatic ages of just experiencing hate, essentially. And overall, um, my life for family therapy is really shown through my father's side, really, with my uncle and his immense impact on my life. Lastly, I want to talk about health. For my grandparents' side, they all face issues. For my father's side, sorry, they all face issues with high blood pressure and diabetes. And next, as you can see, my uncle does not have a family or kids due to his inability for relations due to his mental health, unfortunately. And there was a lot of stress, as you can see from my red arrows over here, and the manipulative kind of lifestyles, as you could see, that were all targeted towards my uncle. And unfortunately, they weren't able to break the cycle, and it kind of trickled into my immediate family as well. But as we're currently progressing, we are currently fighting and just trying to get better as a family through communications and overall just being more respectful and mindful of each other. Thank you so much for listening.